With no further ado, let me start to welcome you to the Bill Silvers Annual Lecture in Genocide, the Holocaust, and Bioethics. It's a pleasure. I'm going to introduce our speaker first. I'll say a few words about Bill and about the lecture series. Dr. Stacey Gallen is the founder and director of the Ferenz Institute for Ethics, Human Rights, and the Holocaust. That was initially the Maimonides Institute for Medicine, Ethics, and the Holocaust. Since receiving her doctorate in medical humanities from Drew University in 2012, she's been a leader in studying and teaching about bioethics and the Holocaust, which is more than a decade. In addition to her many papers and studies in this area, she recently published a book with Springer. She had an anthology that she edited called Bioethics and the Holocaust, a comprehensive study in how the Holocaust continues to shape the ethics of health, medicine, and human rights. She's a contributing editor of the Globe Post and the Times of Israel, and she teaches in multiple settings, including an international course on ethics, human rights, and the Holocaust through the Global Network for Medical, Health Professions, and Bioethics Education, where she is the co-chair for education. I'm going to now switch quickly to speaking about the lecture series. Some people here in the room and online know Bill Silvers well. And it's been my pleasure to get to know him. In fact, I only got to know Stacey, and I've cut off my face because I'm staying too close. I got to know Stacey last year after Alex Kaur gave the annual lecture, and Alex introduced me to Stacey. This lecture series has that ability to bring people together to learn and to share their thoughts and their feelings as they learn about bioethics and the Holocaust. Dr. Silvers is a true Hoosier, born and raised in Carmel, Indiana, graduate from the IU School of Medicine and a faculty member for over 30 years in the University of Colorado School of Medicine. He founded this lectureship with a generous gift to offer space annually for physicians and other community leaders to consider the impact of their work and apply the ethical lessons of the Holocaust to thinking about society, medicine, power, and taking care of our society and each other. Stacey obviously fits directly in that goal, and so she was a natural to invite to give our lecture and visit us this year. So thank you again.
Hey, Nick, you gotta put gotta put it in share. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me tonight. Thanks to Bill, who is a great friend of mine. Very happy that he hopefully can see this. I can't see him, but hopefully he can see me. And thank you to IU for bringing me out here. I am not a true Hoosier, but I am right now, so go Hoosiers. I'm from Jersey. It's not the same. Okay, so tonight's talk is going to be titled Remember the Past, Protect the Future. Lessons from Medicine During the Holocaust. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Holocaust and what we can learn from that dark period in history, what it can teach us about today and the things that we're going through, both in terms of ethics, but also just in terms of society. I am a firm believer that nobody wants to hear me talk for an extended period of time. I think that might be because of my kids, and that's what they tell me. So if anybody has any questions or any comments, please feel free, just jump in. You don't have to wait until I'm finished. Just let me know. Okay, so not what's supposed to happen. Also, thanks to Nick, I think, because none of this really would work without Nick. Okay. Are we seeing the next slide?
I think so.
We're not seeing the next slide. Okay, let's try this.
There you go.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So why are we talking about the Holocaust in terms of bioethics? That is the number one question that I get, okay? Why is the Holocaust the singular example of medically sanctioned genocide? So I am talking to all of you tonight in this wonderful synagogue setting. And so I think that I can have a conversation with you that perhaps I don't have in other settings. I'm a firm believer in meeting the audience where they're at. I was talking to Alex earlier today, and I was saying, with everything that's going on in the world, there's so much to do when you deal with the topic like this one, right? At this point, I'm probably working 27 hours a day, 10 days a week with the rise in anti-Semitism and all of the different people that need support. And I'm, as I said, a firm believer in what does this group need? How can I work with this group and trying to meet everyone where they're at? So that being said, all right, I'm not seeing what you're seeing, so I'm going to have to just kind of wing this. Okay, let's talk about genocide. It's been in the news a lot, okay? There have been a lot of accusations that have been thrown around. What is genocide? This is the definition of genocide as stated in the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide that was published December 9th, 1948. Okay, so, you know, not long after the Holocaust. I put this up here so that you can see this is actually the definition that was agreed upon internationally for what is considered genocide, okay? This last bullet point on the bottom, the United Nations Office on Genocide Prevention and the Responsibility to Protect put out something called When to Refer to a Situation as Genocide. This was fairly recently. You know, maybe there have been some questions. What is genocide? What isn't genocide? Things like that. You may have heard about it. They state that the legal definition is precise and includes an element that is often hard to prove, which is the element of intent. So I don't think there's any question of whether or not the Holocaust was a genocide. We all agree the Holocaust was a genocide. But again, why are we talking about this in terms of bioethics and medicine? Because the Holocaust, as I said, is the singular example of medically sanctioned genocide. So I want to be very clear, as I am when I speak to anyone on this topic, I'm not ranking genocides, okay? Not in the business of doing that. All genocide is bad. However, this genocide is different. And that's the reason why it has so much to teach us today. Okay. When we talk about Nazi medicine and we talk about the Holocaust as medically sanctioned genocide, there are certain things that we need to understand and certain things we need to explore. How could physicians, people who took an oath to heal, transform into killers? Because that's what happened. People assume when I'm talking about this topic, I'm going to be talking about Mengele. 9 times out of 10, I go into a room like this, and people, if I were to ask them at the beginning of the lecture, what am I going to speak about? They will assume I'm going to be talking about medical experimentation, because that's what people know. But it's so much more than that, okay? Physicians were instrumental in every aspect of the Holocaust from the beginning to the end. And when I say beginning, I mean before the Holocaust even started, before the systematic killing of the Jews started. I'm talking about from the ideas, from the theories that allowed the Holocaust to take place. That's what I'm talking about. And that's what we need to understand. That's the story that we need to understand. How did that happen? Because if you understand how that happened, then you can start to understand the implications of that for current society, both for the fields of healthcare, but also just for us, for everybody, for people sitting here in this room, for Jews, for non-Jews, for the next generation, the younger people, for people who are older, for people in the US, for people all over the world, for everybody. And that's why it's so important that we talk about this. There's a misconception that the Holocaust was just a bunch of doctors who kind of went rogue. Or, you know, it was just a few people and that there were no medical ethics. But that's not true. In the 10 years prior to the outbreak of World War II, Germans and Austrians won 5 of the 10 Nobel Prizes in medicine. Nick and I were talking on the way here before, and he was talking about how back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, Europe, they were the leaders. The way that we're leaders today in medicine, they were the leaders. Where did you go if you wanted great medical training? You went to Germany. Germany, they were the leaders. right? So not just the leaders in medical education, they were the only ones leading the way in medical ethics. So it's not that there was not a system of ethics. It was that there was a misguided system of ethics. German physicians voluntarily joined the Nazi Party in larger numbers than any other profession. And most physicians who participated in Nazi medicine did so because they truly believed that what they were doing was the right thing to do. Okay, so where did this come from? When we talk about this theory, right? Science and medicine. So first, let's talk about the scientific theory of eugenics, which was introduced and rapidly popularized internationally. It's not just something that's coming from Germany. It's something that is an international theory. Everybody's buying it because it's this idea that we can use science to improve the genes of people everywhere, right? In case you were wondering, you should all be very proud of yourselves because you live in the state that was the first one in the US to approve eugenic sterilization back in 1907. So kudos to you. I live in New Jersey, as I said. So really,
Same legislature as today.
So what do we have here? You can see this is a very famous picture over here. It's this eugenic tree where it says eugenics is the self-direction of human evolution. So why are we going to trust evolution? Evolution is so important. Why are we going to leave it up to fate? If we have science and we have technology that we can use to better humankind, why wouldn't we do that? That sounds like a great idea. Why wouldn't we do that? That idea starts to gain traction. Francis Galton, he's British. He's the one that coins the term. So we've got Britain, we've got the United States, we've got Australia, we've got literally everywhere. Everyone's embracing this idea because it sounds like a great way to make our communities better and make our communities stronger. Now, in Germany, German eugenics takes a bit of a different slant. German eugenics goes with this idea of race hygiene, which was introduced by someone by the name of Alfred Plotz, who's a German physician. Race hygiene takes things in a slightly different direction. So in the United States is very big on the idea of eugenic sterilization. The United States says, we're not going to allow people who we don't consider to be of good stock. We're not going to let them continue to reproduce because that is bringing our country down. Germany says, okay, Germany is, as a Volk, is a living, breathing organism with its own health and hygiene. After World War I, you had a declining birth rate among the better, more fit and productive class. You had soldiers who were lost in the war, or you had soldiers who came back, there weren't enough beds for them, but you've got people who are physically disabled or mentally disabled, and they're taking up these beds, okay? And then you have other people who are a financial burden on the state, and they're spending money that could be spent on, rehabbing these soldiers or building up the Volk. So they say, all right, well, what are we going to do here? How are we going to return Germany to greatness? What is the plan? So individuals, all of a sudden, instead of treating everyone with inherent dignity, which is typically, something that's characteristic of medicine, healthcare ethics, so individuals are going to be viewed as parts of a whole. They are productive members of society only if they can benefit the Volk. So individual rights aren't important. Individual rights are subverted in favor of societal progress. And that shift right there is one of the most important things to understand about this transformation from healers to killers. Doctors are taught this medical ethics. It becomes a very important part of their education, but it's transformed, it's manipulated. It's a medical ethics that says, your job is not to care for the individual. Your job is to care for the Volk. It's to care for the strength, the health, and the well-being of the nation of Germany. So you need to stop caring for people if they are not going to contribute to the nation of Germany. If that is the ethic that you believe in, then everything that comes after becomes part of your job. If you truly believe in this, as these doctors did, then you believe that sterilizing people or euthanizing people or experimenting on people for the good of the nation is right. It's part of what you're supposed to be doing. So you have, for example, Professor Dr. Fritz Lenz, who was the holder of the first chair of racial hygiene in Germany. And he says the individual personality cannot be the final goal of ethics. The people, the Volk as an organism, is the goal of our ethics. But that doesn't sound like what we know as medical ethics or ethics of any kind, really. Sounds very utilitarian. I wouldn't want to go to a doctor that thought this, right? So what happens next? You take this scientific theory of eugenics and it gets turned from a theory into practice. You have politics on this side and you have science and medicine on this side. So the National Socialist Party is pushing this idea of we need to be the best. We need to be the strongest. We need to create an Aryan nation that is superior to everyone else. And they have their ideas of what that looks like. And you have science and medicine, which they believe can get them to that point. So Hitler was many things, but he definitely was not stupid. He knows the key to this is to get science and medicine on his side because he can use them. He can use them as a way to reach the goals that he's looking to reach. So National Socialism becomes known as applied biology. Everything becomes scientific. Everything becomes medicalized. All of a sudden, you can use science and medicine to solve all of society's problems. So crime, prostitution, alcoholism, feeble-mindedness, which there was never really a great definition for. 50 to 60% of people who were sterilized because they were feeble-minded. So you can use this. You can use science and medicine as a way to accomplish your political goals. That's what they realize, okay? So they incorporate racial hygiene theory into National Socialism. Politics, medicine come together in this perfect marriage to finally help them create exactly what they've wanted to do. Laws and policies, which were really discriminatory and meant to persecute, are portrayed as public health measures, not to discriminate, but instead to protect the pure German citizens. Someone has to protect them. They're being invaded. They're being infected by these outsiders who aren't pure, who are going to make them, they're going to further disintegrate the Volk. So what are they going to do? They need protection. So they've got these laws and these policies. So the political ideals of the Nazi Party, they have to systematically identify, socially isolate, and legally persecute the unfit. How are they going to do it? With science and medicine. They will gain total control of the biological process of evolution. That's what eugenics was for. And they're going to ensure the health and the strength of the German nation. There's another piece of the puzzle. The lecture, the purpose of the speech is when you hear things, it should always cause you to think, and it should always cause you to question, right? There are things that you should hear, and, whether or not everybody in the room agrees with them, or, it should, right, like you said, because, whenever you talk politics, people will have one opinion, people will have another opinion, but you should always question. And I think part of the issue with what happened in Germany was people stopped questioning, which is part of this slide. Why? Why weren't people questioning? Because when you have science and medicine, people trust science and medicine. People believe what science and medicine tell you. So you have science and medicine telling you, no, this is the way. This is the way to create a better society. And then you have the legal system enacting actual laws, public health policy laws that say, this is how we're going to do it, right? So we have step 1, step 2. Now we've got step 3, we've got propaganda, okay? The propaganda machine, as we all know, Nazi propaganda, very well known for its effectiveness. But if you want to take that and you want to bring it, into like the current iteration, that's what social media does today, right? So whether or not it's true doesn't matter. Social media blows it up and all of a sudden everyone thinks it's true. So you have social media coming over here, which is propaganda and Nazi terminology, right? So you have this, for example. This is a Nazi era. You all probably can't see this, so I'll read it to you. A Nazi era high school biology book, okay, warns that a hereditarily ill person costs 50,000 Reich marks on average up to the age of 60. Okay, so what do we see here? You're carrying the burden. The strong, pure Aryan male is carrying the burden of the hereditarily ill person. And that's what we're teaching high school students. Okay? So it's coming everywhere. When we talk about what the Nazis did, they took science and medicine, used it as a way to justify getting rid of those that they deemed unfit, and then found a way to send it out through every possible mechanism. Okay, so again, fast forward to today, this would be going out on TikTok or, whatever, Snapchat, whatever it is. I don't know if my sons were here, they would tell you. And further, right, because again, we got to bolster this idea that this is real, this is fact, this is coming from science and medicine. So we have this quote that Adolf Hitler gives to a group of doctors. He says, you National Socialist doctors, I cannot do without you for a single day, not a single hour. If not for you, if you fail me, then all is lost. Like, I'm a doctor, I'm sitting in a room, like, oh my gosh, like, man, I better do something. Like, literally the entire place depends on me. And then you have over here, Dr. Fritz Klein gave this answer to actually a prisoner doctor in the concentration camps. Of course, I am a doctor and I want to preserve life. And out of respect for human life, I would remove a gangrenous appendix from a diseased body. The Jew is a gangrenous appendix in the body of mankind. It's all medicalized. Is that not anti-Semitism? I would save a life. I am saving Germany. It is the same thing. So the unifying principle of Nazi Party was a deadly racial disease. Got to rid Germany of that disease. It's very simple. Okay, we have medicalized everything, and Hitler becomes the great doctor of the German people. And all the other doctors are biological soldiers doing their job. So you've got medicine plus law equals public policy. You can see they start passing a law for the prevention of hereditarily diseased offspring, which forces sterilization on eugenic grounds. As I said before, here's a whole list, but you'll notice congenital feeble-mindedness, 50 to 60% of all sterilizations. This is helpful because it covers pretty much anything that they want to sterilize anybody for that isn't one of these other items on the list. With anti-Black racial policy, which forces sterilization of 600 to 800 children born to white mothers and non-white fathers from the French colonies. June 26, 1935, men found guilty of sexual activity with other men were castrated to avoid further incarceration. Basically, anybody who they did not want to reproduce, they figured out a way, let's create a law and let's call it public policy and let's say that it's based in medicine or science. So,
Or you could say govern.
sure. The point basically is, wait. Okay. We have figured out a way to stop the further degeneration. But what are you going to do about the people who already exist? Those pesky people who already exist. What to do about them? So, the syringe belongs in the hand of a physician. This is important, and I think something that a lot of people don't realize. People assume in the Holocaust, 6 million Jews, okay? That's not how it started. 2 years before the Nazis began murdering Jews as part of the final solution, their euthanasia program. began. That was the idea of eliminating life unworthy of life. Okay, that's what they called it. So, I mean, obviously there's a lot of problems with the whole idea, but that terminology right there, life unworthy of life. Says who? Why is life unworthy of life? Whose life is unworthy of life? Like, what is this about? Okay. Individuals, their definition, individuals who were believed to pose both a genetic and a financial threat. Now, remember that what you just saw, that cartoon or whatever you want to call it, in the high school yearbook. So obviously financial threat, no good. We already know genetic threat, no good. So why? Because of severe psychiatric, neurological, or physical disabilities. Life unworthy of life. Got to get rid of them. Where are you going to start? With children. Any children? Because technically, you child until you're 18. Nope, children 3 and under. That is where the euthanasia program started. Physicians, nurses, and midwives were required to report children under the age of 3 who showed signs of severe mental or physical disability to the Reich Ministry of the Interior. Let me reiterate. No one was forced to do this. They did it because they thought it was the right thing to do. This is August 18th, 1939, October 1939, specially recruited medical staff, okay? People who are already used to the killing process, people who are already used to recruiting, already used to registering people, began murdering children. How do they do it? By lethal overdoses of medication or starvation. By the end of this process, at least 10,000 children were killed. That was a success, went well. So they expanded it to include adults. Most of these adults were chosen because their disabilities left them unable to work. Remember what we said earlier. Individuals were only valuable if they were able to help the Volk. Their lives were only worth something if they were able to help the Volk. People with disabilities who couldn't work, couldn't contribute, therefore, forget sterilizing them, they just murder them. An estimated 250,000 people were murdered under all phases of the euthanasia program. 250,000 people. That's the euthanasia program. That is not the final solution. That is not killing Jews. That has nothing to do with killing Jews.
This is in October 39.
It was October 1939. Remember that date, by the way, because we're going to go back to that date in a little bit. Okay, so science. We start with science. We start with eugenics. Then we go to medicine, right? Because medicine is what actually becomes the tool that is used. Then we go to law, because we're passing the laws that are allowing all this to happen. We're calling them public health measures. The media, the propaganda is involved. All of these are systems of power, all working together to send the message that certain people were worth more to society based on an accepted scientific theory. So everyone goes along with it. Because when I was growing up, and I grew up in what I believe now, I don't know this synagogue rabbi, so I apologize if I am saying something that is not correct. But I believe I grew up in a synagogue somewhat similar to this one. I had a very good Jewish education growing up, learned a lot about the Holocaust. I just thought, I don't know, everyone kind of went along with it. I never really understood until I learned about this. And then all of a sudden I was like, yeah, I mean, everybody is telling you these people are unfit. Like, how do you turn against your neighbors? How do you turn against your friends? This is the way. This is the way it happens. Now let's move towards today, okay? We have a rise in anti-Semitism and its implication for medicine, ethics, and human rights. What is happening right now? Whoop. Hold on. All right. Morality in crisis. This is where we are right now. Okay. There is a gentleman, a scholar by the name of Robert Proctor. He wrote a fantastic book. Obviously, I can't remember the name of it now. That would be too easy, but you can Google his name. You'll find the book. It's a really good book. I recommend it. He says, in times of war or economic crisis, things can happen that otherwise, in times of peace or economic stability, would never be tolerated. Now, remember that date I just told you to remember, right? October 1939? Hitler, when that is when the euthanasia program started for adults, okay? But he backdated his letter. There was he didn't put a lot down on paper when it came to that, because, you know, it's probably not something you want to write down. Like, yes, I authorized the killing of lots of people. But he did. He put this down on paper, and he backdated it to September 1st, 1939, to coincide with the start of the war. Why? Because in times of war or economic crisis, things can happen that otherwise in times of peace or economic stability would never be tolerated. Like, you know, a euthanasia program. Okay, so the National Socialist Party was able to use wartime as an excuse to entirely change the traditional medical paradigm. Years and years and years, right? Since Hippocrates. The doctor cares for the patient. Doctor cares for the patient. Doctor-patient relationship. Completely turned on its head. And now the doctor is caring for the nation. The whole purpose of medicine is to strengthen the nation at the expense of the individual. All of this happens, right, in this time of crisis. So the transformation of the medical ethos leads to, among other things, a healthcare system that ministers to the strong instead of caring for the sick or the vulnerable. A hierarchy of human life results in which people were labeled, persecuted, and eventually murdered based on their perceived fitness and worth to society. Remember that first slide we talked about with genocide, right? If we were to go back, which I'm not going to do because I will definitely mess this up and Nick will have to come in and fix it. It'll be a whole thing. But if we went back and we looked at genocide, if you go back and you look at what constitutes genocide, you can check off that the doctors did every single one of those. So not only can you say, yes, the Holocaust was an example of genocide, you can say it was an example of medically sanctioned genocide. So here's the problem. This was released yesterday. Fortuitous, right? Because I'm here today. This was released yesterday. We don't just have an issue with morality right now. Jews are in crisis, okay? April 16th, the ADL releases the final report of anti-Semitic incidents from 2023, okay? 8,873 incidents of assault, harassment, and vandalism across the country. That is a 140% increase from 2022, which was already the highest recorded number ever, okay? This is the highest level recorded since the ADL started tracking data in 1979. Campus incidents tripled. Bomb threats targeting Jewish institutions increased tenfold. The 12-month total for 2023 surpassed the totals of all the past 3 years combined and averaged about 24 anti-Jewish incidents in the US per day. 24 incidents per day. Okay? Here's what's happening in medical schools, in case you were wondering. David Geffen School of Medicine at UCLA. Last week, the school held a mandatory lecture for first-year medical students, during which the lecturer, whose face was covered in a keffiyeh for the entire session, led a free Palestine chant. The majority of the class enthusiastically participated in the chant. Mandatory.
That's
David Geffen School of Medicine at UCLA. Majority of the class enthusiastically participated in the chant. All right, so then we have, this is at Georgetown University Medical School. By the way, there's a million of these. I just picked 3, okay? You can read the whole thing, but basically, right, you can see that you have things that are completely opposite what it is to become a physician. What will they do if they have to treat an Israeli patient or a Jewish patient? Okay, you have senior residents who've gotten in the face of Jewish residents. Like, what is happening, right? So, I mean, what you can see from this lecture, like I said, it didn't start with the murdering of Jews. It starts with certain attitudes about people or politics or, you know, hierarchy of human life. And it goes from there. Well, and then you have this, which is international anti-Semitism. A Norwegian medical student, fifth year, she's fifth year at the Medical University of Warsaw. I actually have a lot of friends who work at this university. And I was involved in writing the letter, not in Polish because I don't speak Polish, but in helping them, they translated it, to write the letter to the dean, because keep the world clean. That sound like anything we've spoken about today? Right? And it's just not Jews, of course not Jews. Right? So here's the thing. And then we've got this, right? We've got Hamas has admitted to using almost every hospital in Gaza, right? As part of their headquarters, which is a direct violation. I mean, obviously of bioethics, also violation of the law of war to headquarter yourself in a hospital. So this is all going on right now. There's a ton of things that are going on. And then, of course, as we talked about earlier, you've got the questions about, what is genocide? What isn't genocide? All those things. Forget that. There are blatant issues in bioethics right now that are happening right now that have to be dealt with, that people have to speak up about. So what can we do, right? Because this is all really depressing, and I don't want to leave you on a really depressing note. So I'm going to leave you at least, one person here knows this lovely lady that I'm with in this picture, right?
Of course.
There's Eva. There's Eva Moses Core, who I had the absolute honor and pleasure of knowing. She was an inspiration. She was a friend. She was a mentor. I hear she was a wonderful mom. She has a wonderful son, I'll tell you that. The night I met Eva, I promised her that I would continue to talk about this always, and to pass the lessons down, and to make sure, because I believe this is what Eva would have wanted, and I said this to Alex before. If Eva were here, what would she do? She would get up to speed real quick, and she would make sure that she got out there and she talked about this, and she figured out a way to use the lessons from the Holocaust to help us deal with this situation, because we have a serious problem. We find ourselves in a time of crisis, and we know what happens when we find ourselves in a time of crisis. Elie Wiesel said, there may be times when we are powerless to prevent injustice, but there must never be a time when we fail to protest. Take the word protest to mean whatever you want. I take it to mean this: stand up and speak out. Make sure people know the truth. Because I think that is something we are missing right now. There's a lot of misinformation and a lot of disinformation. There always has been when it comes to the Holocaust. That's not new. But this is new. This version of what we're dealing with now is new. So what can we do? How do we counter it? We have to talk about it. We have to educate. We have to understand the lessons of the Holocaust and how you can use them today. How do they apply to physicians? How do they apply to the people sitting in this room? How do they apply to high school students? I was just talking about that. I don't typically teach high school students. Guess what? I do now, because they need help. They need resources. They're being asked to be on the front lines of this fight. They didn't ask for it. They don't know what to do. So we got to help them. We have to try. We have to fight. Eva would have fought. I know Eva would have fought. Elie Wiesel would have fought. So with that, I say we find ourselves again at a turning point in history. We must learn from the past to protect the future. The difference, we have the freedom and the power to act, and we have the moral clarity to guide us. Every one of us can and must do something no matter what it is, each and every prayer, voice, and action, they all matter. Everything you do matters. Do something. It doesn't matter what it is. Do something to make the world a better place. That's what Eva taught me. When history looks back at this moment, what we do now is going to make a difference. So I sat here, I gave you my talk. I asked one thing of you. You do not have to answer it out loud. It's just to think about it. As you leave here this evening, what will you do to make sure that this time, when we say never again, we keep our promise? That's all I have for you. If anyone has any questions, you feel free to ask them out loud. You can come up to me afterwards, whatever. I'm here.